10. Pit to hell. In the cold Russian Arctic, scientists have discovered a pit to hell. Nobody is sure exactly what happened, but during an expedition to the Yamal Peninsula in 2020, researchers beheld a crater in the middle of the ice that appeared to go down into infinite darkness. The crater was probably made by some kind of crazy explosion, probably by subterranean gases which exploded and caused a huge hole to be blown into the earth. Scientists say it's a rare natural phenomenon that happens because the Russian Arctic is heating up too quickly. The crater to hell is about 150 feet deep. Russian scientists named it Crater 17 because 16 other craters have also been found. The first one appeared in 2014, meaning in only 6 short years there have been 17 devastating explosions that created giant holes in the planet. Yevgeny Chuvalin, one of Russia's leading permafrost experts who took part in the expedition, told the New York Times, "It was making noises. It was like something was alive. The trapped methane goes off like a bottle of champagne." The explosions most likely happen when methane gas is released from melting permafrost. The methane creates a bubble underground, which eventually explodes and leaves an open wound on the face of the Earth. 9. Arctic Nazi Base. A mysterious Nazi base has recently been rediscovered in the Arctic. Russian researchers discovered a weather station called Schatzgraber or Treasure Hunter, just rotting away in the middle of nowhere in the Arctic Circle that was once used to help support Nazis during World War II. The region was once heavily used by Allied troops from America, Canada, and Britain to deliver much-needed supplies to the Soviet Union back during the war. But none of them had any idea there was a secret Nazi base filled with soldiers watching their every move. The base was tasked with helping German U-boats and marine patrols to sink the convoys and destroy the supplies before they could reach Russia. No supplies meant soldiers of the opposing side couldn't fight, let alone survive. Thus they thought it was a good plan, and it was. According to Popular Mechanics, the Russians have finally found this legendary base 620 miles from the North Pole. It was in use in 1943 and then abandoned the following year after the crew ran low in supplies and were forced to eat a raw polar bear, which poisoned them and made them sick. Yuck. However, this may not have actually happened. This is just the official record. Much of the story of this mysterious Arctic base is shrouded in mystery. There was never any evidence found until recently. Then there's the name. Treasure Hunter could easily be interpreted as something else. Some believe that the station served another purpose as a base for Nazi archaeological study, like searching for Nordic artifacts for propaganda purposes. Or it is possible someone just watched Raiders of the Lost Ark too many times. What the Russians found there didn't really help solve anything either, since it was deserted and completely wrecked. 8. Visiting aliens. Aliens were recently spotted hovering above the Arctic Circle in one of the most bizarre events in Arctic history. There were thousands of people in Norway and Sweden who were shocked to look up at the night sky and see weird blue lights just hovering around in the atmosphere. It looked as if alien spacecrafts were coming down from the heavens and producing all kinds of vibrant, glowing blue balls of light. Local photographer Chad Blakely got some snapshots of the bizarre lights and uploaded them online, sparking a barrage of conspiracy theories from stargazers all over the world. Some claim the photos were edited, but they weren't. They also didn't show space invaders, unfortunately. Officials quickly came out and dismissed the lights as being from extraterrestrial visitors. Instead, the lights were allegedly part of an ongoing experiment by NASA called the Auroral Zone Upwelling Rocket Experiment. This involved launching a pair of rockets from the Andøya Space Center in Norway into the sky. Why did they do it at night? To freak people out. The rockets released metallic powder into the air, which blended with the natural northern lights to create a spectacle like an alien invasion. Then again, maybe it was an alien invasion, and NASA is covering it up. What do you think? Is it a cover-up? Let us know in the comments below, and if you're liking this video, be sure to hit the thumbs up and subscribe buttons if you haven't already. 7. The oldest shark. In the Arctic waters off the coast of Greenland, the oldest living vertebrate has just been discovered by scientists surveying the area. By oldest living vertebrate, we mean the oldest animal currently living on the entire planet. Scientists say it goes to show just how little we actually understand about the natural world. We really don't know that much at all. To give you an idea of just how old this mysterious beast is, it was born sometime between when Christopher Columbus landed in America and the French Revolution. or between 1482 and 1789. That makes the monster between 272 and 512 years old. It's basically immortal. Mind blown. But what kind of animal is this? It's just an ordinary shark, a Greenland shark to be exact. It's one of the biggest carnivores in the ocean and one of the largest sharks that has ever lived. But people don't pay a lot of attention to it because it lives so deep in the freezing waters of the Arctic. A PhD student from the University of Copenhagen, Denmark, and lead author Julius Nielsen hopes that the discovery will bring attention to this overlooked species. It's one of the world's biggest meat-eating sharks, but it's a totally overlooked animal. There simply isn't enough management or understanding of the ecology in the North Atlantic Ocean. It's traditionally seen as a scavenger, but does hunt seals and fish as well. It also doesn't reach sexual maturity for 150 years, meaning it has to survive nearly double the expected life of most humans before it can even think about having babies. 6. The superbug. In a remote region of the Arctic, scientists have discovered a superbug gene, a unique gene that helps bacteria to evade antibiotics. If that sounds horrifying, that's because it is. For bacteria to be able to avoid antibiotics, for something like this to leak into the general population, well, it could set us back to the Stone Age when people died from simple infections. Yikes. The discovery was made with help from David Graham from Newcastle University in the United Kingdom. According to Graham, humanity's overuse of antibiotics has created a new world of strains that are resistant to modern drugs, bacterial strains that have never before existed in nature. The scientists found these genes by extracting soil samples in the Arctic and analyzing the DNA within. Weirdly, they found 131 antibiotic-resistant genes, and a lot of them weren't even local. This means that genes resistant to antibiotics have been passed along to birds and other wildlife which have spread them across the world, even to the far north. Nobody knows exactly what this discovery means for the future, but it's not looking good. And do you think we should be worried? 5. Lost whaling ship. Archaeologists exploring the dense coast of Alaska ended up stumbling upon the old remains of broken wooden hulls from a pair of ships that crashed back in the 19th century. These aren't the oldest ships in the world, but their presence in the Arctic was more than a little mysterious. Archaeologists also discovered pots used for holding whale oil, anchors, chains, and other interesting artifacts, suggesting that the boats had been used in the whaling industry. The broken ships had remained in relatively pristine condition because of the frigid Arctic temperatures. The cold weather kept the ship mostly intact. Brad Barr, an archaeologist with the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, said the discovery wouldn't even have been possible if not for global warming. The whaling ships had probably crashed and partially sank along the Alaskan coast, were covered by ice, and roughly 100 years later, that ice melted enough for archaeologists to find them. Unfortunately, archaeologists have no way of finding out which whaling vessels these are. There were at least 33 vessels abandoned mysteriously in the area in 1871 after getting trapped in the ice, with 1,200 whalers needing to be rescued by other boats. These shipwrecks could be from then, but there is no way to tell for sure. 4. Dinosaur bones. Tiny fossils have been discovered in Alaska, leading researchers to better understand how dinosaurs flourished in the prehistoric Arctic. A weird deposit of baby dinosaur bones and teeth have given researchers insight into a whole host of interesting Arctic dinosaur species. Previously, scientists were unsure if dinosaurs could even survive in the Arctic, and if so, what kind of dinosaurs lived there. It now appears that many ordinary species of dinosaurs lived in the northernmost regions of the world throughout the entire year, enduring the sub-zero temperatures, the lack of food, and 4 full months of darkness. But let's back it up a bit. The first proof of dinosaurs living in the Arctic came from a footprint in 1960. Since then, a handful of dinosaur bones have been found in the area. But this was the biggest discovery, with the bones of baby dinosaurs belonging to Hadrosaurus, Tyrannosaurus, and much more being found. Before this discovery, scientists thought it was too cold for dinosaurs to live comfortably in these temperatures. Scientists don't know how, but some of the biggest and most ferocious meat-eating monsters ever to roam the planet somehow lived a stable life in the Arctic millions of years ago, despite the cold and the snow. 3. Woolly mammoth blood. In one of the most shocking Arctic discoveries ever made, Liquid woolly mammoth blood has been found, and some say it could be used to finally create a clone of this legendary beast. Should it be done? That's a question that evokes curiosity from moral and sound minds alike. A team of scientists from both Russia and South Korea discovered the remains of a dead woolly mammoth after it thawed from a chunk of Arctic ice. The specimen was so perfectly preserved that they found liquid blood inside of its veins. This is incredibly rare, and scientists all over the world were understandably excited. The woolly mammoth dates back 10,000 years. After being dead for so long, the creature shouldn't have had a single drop of blood left in its prehistoric frozen body. And yet the freezing temperatures kept it almost in the same shape it was when it died. Researchers also found muscle tissue, which scientists said was the same red color of fresh meat. It was in such a great state of preservation that the scientists could have pretty much cooked up a mammoth steak. Imagine how much that would have cost at your local grocery store. Would you be brave enough to try it? As for the cloning process, scientists say they still need to analyze the muscle tissue and inspect the liquid blood in more detail before they start throwing around words like cloning and de-extinction. 2. The Yeti. A British geneticist claims to have found the legendary Yeti, or at least to have solved the mystery of the great abominable snowman. Brian Sykes, a professor from Oxford University, says he analyzed DNA from hair samples collected by Yeti enthusiasts, which they say belonged to the monster. After analyzing the hair samples, Brian was shocked to see that they shared genetic similarities with a rare polar bear jawbone previously found in the Norwegian Arctic. The jawbone dates back 40,000 years. Here's what that means. The Yeti is real, but it's not the monster we all think it is. Instead, the Yeti is probably a direct descendant of a prehistoric bear. That would explain why people think the Yeti looks like a huge white Bigfoot. The creature is actually a weird hybrid between a polar bear and a brown bear. The specimens that the scientists analyzed came from about 40 years ago, suggesting the prehistoric bear is still alive, hiding somewhere in the great snowy regions of the planet. But where? And do you think this is even true? Or is there actually a Bigfoot hiding in the wilderness? 1. Medieval mummies. In Siberia, medieval mummies were excavated from the Arctic permafrost, and scientists say they probably belong to an ancient and lost civilization that flourished at the edge of Siberia in the Arctic. The remains of an adult human and a baby were found at a mysterious archaeological necropolis, each covered in plated copper. Over the years and through all the excavation, scientists discovered nearly 100 graves in the region, with some of them containing mysterious grave goods. Unfortunately, finding these Arctic mummies did not really reveal any important or new information about the civilization that prospered here. Scientists were only able to date the mummies, which revealed they died sometime between the 8th and 13th centuries AD, but no other trace of the mysterious people has been found. They either died in the cold or migrated to warmer places. Either way, their cultures vanished beneath the snow.
8. Chanchan Peru. Many civilizations leave behind objects that offer a glimpse into ancient life. For the Chimo culture of Peru, a recent discovery of wooden sculptures was located at an archaeological site in 2018. Found in the main entrance to the massive citadel Chanchan, the 19 sculptures were located in a corridor that was decorated with mud reliefs. The head of Chanchan Research and Conservation believes that the location of the sculptures could possibly mean they were guardians of the site, and were often used to mark tombs of important figures in the Chimu culture. Measuring about 2 feet high, each sculpture is more than 750 years old, with each holding a scepter in one hand and a trophy head in the other. They're also wearing clay masks with circular shields on their backs. The archaeologist in charge of the excavation believes that they are the oldest known sculptures on the site, possibly belonging to the middle stage of the Chanchan, between 1100 and 1300 AD. Even more remarkable are the other discoveries at the site, including zoomorphic motifs with a feline or lunar animal, as well as the discovery of the sacrifices of 140 children and 200 llamas. Yikes. A pre-Incan culture, the Chimu emerged along the northern coast of Peru between 1100 and 1470 AD, and with Chanchan as its political and religious capital of the Chimu civilization, it isn't difficult to imagine that these discoveries played an important role in local culture. 7. Silver coffins of Prague. In the 1980s, before the fall of communist rule in Czechoslovakia, a special task force of the Czech Interior Ministry discovered a mysterious cache of long-lost 18th century decorated coffins of Italian Grand Duchess of Tuscany, Anna Maria Francisca, and her husband. Located in an unmarked sanctuary crypt in Zakopy Gothic Church, the lavish coffins were richly decorated, a fitting tribute to Anna Maria, who was part of history's infamous Medici family, a wool-trading family from Tuscany who rose to social and political prominence in the 1400s. As an integral part of European culture, the Czechs are well known for their use of the Baroque style in not only their architecture and art, but apparently in their decoration of coffins. It would take 5 years from the initial discovery for any documentation of the coffins to initiate, but eventually, the two agents who participated in the original operation hosted a film crew to reenact the discovery. A detailed report of the expedition was filed with the Czech Ministry of Culture and the Litomyjice Diocese, which is part of the Roman Catholic Church in Prague. Sadly, as recent as 2005, the coffins were reportedly still in the watery underground of Zakopy Castle, left to rot. A sad ending to not only the lives of Anna Maria and her husband, but for such beautiful coffins whose artistry deserves to be celebrated. 6. Strange religious relics. If you thought a rotting coffin wasn't creepy enough, Prague has a number of other strange relics that may make your skin crawl. In case you didn't know, religious relics aren't just blessed items. They can include the physical remains of a saint or someone considered holy. Yeah, that means they're often bodies or body parts of holy figures, and they're considered sacred among their believers. They don't only come from the Christian religion. There are also relics related to Buddhism. Because these items are seen as sacred, they cannot be treated as simple objects. They're considered holy and represent the history of the religion they belong to. Since having a relic in one's possession means that the item must not only be revered but protected, they're often kept in an elaborately decorated reliquary or ossuary, which are containers to protect the item. In Prague, a few of the notable relics include 24 mummies located in the Capuchin church in the town of Brno. Over a period of 300 years, the monks placed their deceased brothers in the underground crypt. Because they've taken a vow of poverty, the monks simply reused the one coffin they had, each time moving the body of their fallen brother aside to enter another. The dry air inside the crypt allowed the bodies to preserve where they lay, still dressed in their ceremonial robes, clutching rosaries and crucifixes. Other relics in Prague include 12 strangely painted skulls located in an ossuary under a church in the town of Kryny. In 1991, archaeologists located a walled-in tomb that had skulls with laurel wreaths drawn in coal on the bones. As 2 other churches were surveyed, an underground crypt revealed the hidden remains of almost 1,000 people, placed there after the local cemetery was abolished. Although hoarding the bones of long-dead holy people might seem strange, they were highly sought after, with even the first Holy Roman Emperor demanding every altar should have its own relics. Because of this decree, finding and obtaining these important remains became a competitive undertaking, with a black market for such items flourishing. As worshippers flocked to the churches and cathedrals to catch a glimpse of these relics in the hopes of some sort of healing power, or the opportunity to witness a miracle in their presence, the quest to obtain those relics that would attract the most visitors turned holy relics into a business. Do you think it's strange that relics like these are considered holy? Let us know in the comments below, and if you're liking this video, be sure to hit the thumbs up and subscribe buttons if you haven't already. 5. Bronze Age Queen. When archaeologists uncovered a grave in La Almoloya, Spain, they had an inkling the remains were of someone important. Buried with almost 30 silver objects, including a rare silver diadem or jeweled crown on her head, the woman was believed to have been buried around 1700 BC. They also discovered silver earlobe plugs, silver bracelets, and a necklace, with the items totaling about 230 grams of silver. As scholars surveyed the items, they concluded that the woman's crown was a symbol of power to the El Argar society, who lived in southeastern Spain from 2200 to 1550 BC. Strangely, the woman's remains were found inside a large pot. There were also the remains of a man with her. The man, however, didn't have the same elaborate objects as she did, giving further proof to the idea that she was a woman of great importance. Interestingly, 4 other diadems had been previously discovered in the area, and all were recovered in the graves of women, pointing to the possibility that they were political or economic leaders in their time. The remains were found under the floor of the palace, where researchers believe people gathered for meetings rather than drinking or entertainment, Considered one of the wealthiest burials of the European Bronze Age, the woman was obviously one of great power and control, and to have her remains placed at what may be Western Europe's earliest palace, she was obviously a woman of great importance and not just the partners of ruling men. 4. Ancient Aboriginal Stencils. The rock paintings found in Australia are an important link to the continent's past. Recently, archaeologists believe they found the technique that made this ancient art so lasting. Most of the stencils used to create the rock art were large, with ancient Aboriginals placing their hand against the wall and then spraying liquid pigment to create shapes. But when 17 stenciled paintings were found that were a lot smaller, researchers set out to find how they were created. Over 500 years old, the small paintings depicted a variety of scenes including humans, animals, and geometric designs. Using material that is native to the region and with the help of indigenous Mara people who helped with the experiment, the team reproduced the ancient art with small models sculpted from beeswax. Using beeswax wasn't uncommon, and it was traditionally used to make toys and to repair spears. So scientists realized that beeswax or another similar resin or clay would have been used to make the small stencils. After heating and shaping the beeswax, they were able to recreate the miniature stencils. The earliest known examples of rock art are about 44,000 years old, with similar stencils found in New South Wales and an island in Indonesia. Believing the artwork was done for religious purposes, researchers stress that the unique nature and number of stenciled art are important finds in documenting not only rock art in Australia, but how it compares to similar cave art depictions around the globe. 3. Aztec Skull Tower. A terrifying tower of human skulls originally uncovered in 2015 Mexico is now believed to be much larger than ever thought. Believed to be gifts to the gods, the Tower of Skulls was built between 1486 and 1502. Initially, the Huayzompantli had a believed 484 skulls stacked and mortared into one sinister towering display. But as researchers continued to excavate, they found an additional 119 skulls to add to the structure. Found in the Aztec capital city of Tenochtitlan, modern-day Mexico City, it is just one of 7 similar structures mentioned as far back as 1521 by Spanish conquistador Hernan Cortez, who conquered the Aztecs and claimed Mexico on behalf of Spain. Raised not long after the conquistadors found them, the toppled remains of the towers had been previously hidden until archaeologists unearthed this new section. It might seem strange that displaying severed heads of captured warriors was common in Mesoamerica, but these Zompantli had a surprise in store. Some of the skulls in the new discovery belonged to 3 children, whose skulls were identified by their size and development of their teeth, and a number of women. Previously, researchers thought the skulls in the structure only belonged to defeated male warriors, so the recent analysis was very important in bringing this newfound evidence to light. The skulls were found at the ruins of the Aztec religious center Templo Mayor near the Metropolitan Cathedral in Mexico City, which was built over the 14th and 15th century ruins. First discovered in 2015 by archaeologists, the tower sits on a site dedicated to the war god Huitzilopochtli and the rain god Tlaloc. Whether the skulls belonged to prisoners, warriors, or captives kept for sacrificial ceremonies, all became important and were dressed and treated as personifications of the deities themselves, making the site and the remains displayed there one of the most impressive archaeological finds in recent years. 2. Saxon Cave House. Earlier in 2021, an underground house located in the Anchor Church Caves in England was surveyed and determined to be similar to Saxon architecture. Cut directly into the sandstone, the home with its narrow arched doorways and rock-cut pillars for support dated to the early 9th century. The house was surveyed by researchers from the Royal Agricultural University and Wessex Archaeology, who found a striking resemblance to a nearby crypt that belonged to Saxons, a group that lived in England in the early Middle Ages and were immigrants from northern Germany and southern Scandinavia. During their research, scientists surveyed the space, which included 3 rooms and a chapel, which further led them to wonder if it could have once been the dwelling of a local king who was forcefully removed from office. King Eardwulf, who ruled Northumbria until 806, was buried only 5 miles from the cave when Vikings were raiding Britain. Later named Saint Hardulf, the king supposedly lived in the cave alone, becoming a bit of a recluse, but also a living saint who had disciples who would come to him for consultation. It wasn't uncommon for deposed Saxon kings to take up this role, living as monks or hermits as a way of keeping their status instead of being removed from their position. Apparently, the king-turned-monk wasn't the only one who took a liking to cave life. In the 18th century, a local landowner modified the cave by adding brickwork and window frames so he could host dinners in the cell. It's a unique glimpse into Anglo-Saxon England. The cave house has survived in plain sight and has not only history, but folklore attached to it. 1. Neanderthal Bonard. Unicorn Cave is the largest cave in the western part of the Harz Mountains in Germany. It has been a hotbed of not only exploration, but myth. As far back as the Middle Ages, people have entered the cave in search of unicorn bones, which they believe would provide special medicine when combined with powdered gold and silver. While bones have indeed been found there, they're believed to be the fossilized bones of long-extinct cave bears and other large mammals. But that hasn't stopped the search in the infamous cave. In 2019, the infamous cave would provide something even more interesting than the bones of fabled animals. An archaeozoologist who specializes in identifying animals from the distant past came across the knuckle bone of a large hoofed animal. But when he took a closer look at the bone, which was about the size of a chess piece, he noticed 10 deep slanting lines cut into the bone on one side. While one might immediately think the cuts were the result of an ancient man cutting into the bone in search of meat or marrow, the marks were too intentional. That's when it clicked. The lines were an abstract pattern or decorative design. Located in hills halfway between Frankfurt and Berlin, the cave was known for being used by early modern humans and their Neanderthal ancestors. But the mysterious bone and its carving dated to about 51,000 years old, created at least 1,000 years before modern humans ever arrived there. This made the find even more astonishing than previously thought. Neanderthals had always been assumed to be incapable of creativity or complex thought. But the pattern carved into the bone was evidence that culture and the birth of art may have started centuries before anyone could have previously imagined. 8. Cahokia. It might seem strange that the biggest city of North Mexico could disappear, but that very thing happened with a place known as Cahokia. The city, which was in what is now Illinois, was home to 20,000 people at its peak, around the turn of the first millennium. It was part of the last major prehistoric culture that developed in North America, the Mississippian culture, which lasted from 700 CE to the time the first European explorers arrived. But by the 1600s, the civilization had all but disappeared, abandoning their villages and their massive monumental earthen mounds that they used for residences, burial grounds, meeting places, and even as ceremonial centers. Each settlement had one or more pyramid-shaped earthen mounds grouped around a central plaza. Some of the mounds still exist, with one at Collinsville, Illinois known as the Cahokia Mounds, standing 1,000 feet long, 700 feet wide, and 100 feet high. The artifacts from Mississippian culture include elaborate headdresses, ritual weapons, pottery, and masks that featured carved or engraved feathered serpents, winged warriors, and spiders. So, what led to the decline of such a thriving culture? Because the Cahokia people had no written language, researchers have to look at the artifacts they left behind to determine not only how they lived, but why they disappeared. At the time the Mississippian cities were built, the world was going through what became known as the medieval climatic anomaly, which was an unusually warm period. Looking at their decline, the global climate grew colder in what was known as the Little Ice Age. Researchers found that there was more rain in that time period, which coincided with an explosion in corn production and consumption from these ancient people. As volcanic activity continued around the globe and warming patterns shifted, cold air funneled down from the Arctic, which was not only bad for corn crops, but could have stirred up unrest between villages as resources became scarce. As Mississippians abandoned their cities to move further south, their city-states were completely abandoned, leaving behind these massive mounds as a reminder of the once thriving culture. 7. The Nok culture. One of the earliest societies in Western Africa, the Nok culture existed in what is now Nigeria from 500 BCE to 200 CE. Known for their unique terracotta sculptures, iron tools, and crop farming, the Nok were first discovered near the Nigerian town of, you guessed it, Nok, with artifacts unearthed by modern residents. Mostly made up of sculptures of human heads, human figures, and animals, the most striking thing about the pieces were the triangular or oval-shaped eyes on the human faces. Researchers also unearthed 13 iron smelting furnaces in another Nigerian village, as well as iron farming tools and weapons. Their ironwork is one of their characteristic traits, with pieces dating back to at least the 4th century BCE. But researchers have also found stone tools in their artifacts, proving the Nok were one of the few civilizations who transitioned from stone tools to iron tools without first learning how to make copper or bronze. Indeed, other cultures such as the Ife people, who lived around the 11th century, are believed to have been somewhat influenced by the Nok, with their detailed, lifelike metal sculptures of heads somewhat similar to the Nok's artistry. Even though their influence is seen in later cultures, the Nok remain a mysterious yet advanced ancient civilization. 6. Sanxingdui. When a half-faced gold mask was discovered in southwestern China, it caused a bit of a stir, with various memes popping up online, but the broken gold mask, found with 500 other relics at the Sanxingdui ruins, was a fascinating find, and not just because it was located in a stunning sacrificial pit. Forged several thousand years ago, the mask was just one item in a treasure trove unearthed in 1986. Found in China's Sichuan province, all of the items discovered in the excavation pits had been burned and smashed before being buried. So was this some unique method of worship, or did an enemy of the people who created the items do this as a final insult? Over 500 relics were found in the pits, including a kneeling human figure that was wearing a sacrificial vessel on its head, as well as bird-shaped gold decoration pieces. Strange clay pig figurines were also found, as well as human figures that had large noses and bulging eyes. The outlandish style is not normally seen in traditional Chinese artifacts, so the discovery of artifacts from this ancient civilization was not only diverse, but a unique way to memorialize their ancestors and gods. Other masks that were found are much too big to wear, stretching more than 3 feet wide. Researchers believe they may have been used for decoration on architecture instead. Many of these bronze vessels looked similar, with knife-shaped eyebrows, big ears, and stretched earlobes, and a stubby nose. Although many of the heads look alike, a lot of them had different head shapes and haircuts, which some scholars think may have been created to represent different races or identities. No one knows exactly what was going on here, but our best guesses point to some very bizarre traditions to be sure. 5. Shila. One of Korea's 3 kingdoms, the Shila kingdom was based in the southeast of the Korean peninsula. Founded in 57 BCE by King Cahokia, Shila survived for nearly 1,000 years, making it one of the longest dynasties in human history. Ruled by 3 different families in the early centuries, Shila began its rise as a powerful city-state. By the early 500s, it had grown into a proper kingdom, adopting Buddhism as the state religion. Ruled by members of the Bak, Sok, and finally, the Gim family, the kingdom often had women who reigned instead of men. Ruled by what is known as a true bone caste, kings and queens with royal ancestors on both sides of the family were known as those of the highest bone rank, the sacred bone. Even though the Shila kingdom made an alliance with Korea's Baekje kingdom and Goguryeo, with each controlling a different part of the Korean peninsula, it fell into decline in the 800s. As other powerful nobles threatened the power of the kings and military rebellions targeted them, the last king of unified Shila surrendered to the Goryeo kingdom in 935, signaling the downfall of this once great kingdom. 4. Nabta Playa. A 7,000-year-old stone circle built in Africa is not only the world's first astronomical site, but is older than the Stonehenge. Built to track the summer solstice and the arrival of the annual monsoon season, Nabta Playa stands 700 miles south of the Great Pyramid of Giza in Egypt. Built more than 7,000 years ago, it's not only the oldest stone circle in the world, but possibly Earth's oldest astronomical observatory. Constructed by a cattle-worshipping cult of nomadic people, it was built to mark the summer solstice, which is a time that coincided with the arrival of the monsoon rains in the Sahara Desert thousands of years ago. In the 1960s, as Egypt planned a major dam project along the Nile River, a prominent American archaeologist wanted to search for the ancient origins of pharaonic Egypt away from the Nile River. It would be almost 15 years later when a nomadic Arab guide came across what looked like large stone megaliths while he was crossing the Sahara Desert. Taking the American archaeologist with him to the site 60 miles away from the Nile, the 2 men spotted the evidence of the megalithic remains. At first thinking they were natural formations, the archaeologists realized the site was at one time a large lake bed. It wasn't until excavations began in the early 1990s that researchers uncovered a circle of stones aligned with the stars in a mysterious way. Bringing in an expert on astronomy, the group realized the alignment of the stones radiated from a burial mound and that they formed the covering of the tomb. As they surveyed every one of the megaliths, they found samples from fire hearths using radiocarbon dating to calculate when the stones were in alignment with the brightest stars in the northern sky. In the decades since its discovery, archaeologists continued to unravel the mystery of these ancient people, determining the nomadic people who lived there used the bright stars in the circular motion of the heavens to chart their time. Sadly though, as word began to spread about this discovery in the desert, tourists were able to locate the stone circle by using a research paper from the archaeologists to locate the latitude and longitude of the site. Soon, visitors to the area started to deface the megaliths and stand up nearby stones, changing the site's alignment. Once pristine for 5,000 years, the site and its ancient mysteries were so ruined that the government moved all the stones to a museum in the region in an effort to preserve history for future generations to study. 3. Olmec civilization. The first Mesoamerican civilization, the Olmec culture was located in ancient Mexico from 1200 BCE to 400 BCE. Known for their sacred complexes and massive stone structures, the Olmec traded with cultures as far south as present-day Nicaragua. But for some reason, this once powerful culture suffered turmoil, with most of their monuments destroyed between 400 and 300 BCE. With a lack of archaeological evidence, there's still a lot of mystery surrounding the civilization. Even their name, which means rubber people and was given to them by the Aztecs, don't exactly tell us what they called themselves. But it is their practice of pilgrimages, cave rituals, and sacrifice that left a lasting impression on archaeologists. Sacrifice wasn't uncommon in the Aztec Empire, with many stories of beating hearts being ripped from victims and enemies being dismembered and decapitated. Ritually killing their enemies, the Aztecs and before them the Olmec sacrificed as a show of intimidation, often displaying their skulls as a reminder of their strength and a warning to others. Maybe that's why one of the lasting legacies of the Olmec are massive sculpted heads carved from volcanic rock and weighing up to 20 tons each. Each depicts a male face with distinctive features that led researchers to believe they represent kings instead of gods, who are usually shown blended with animals. Oddly, the main cities were reserved for the kings and elite Olmec, and most of the villagers lived in rural areas where they cultivated various crops and became one of the first societies who learned how to extract the sap and juice from the rubber tree, which led to the name given to them by the Aztecs. What would you do if you were scheduled to be sacrificed to the gods? Would you run away and try to survive in the wilderness? That's what I would try to do. Tell me your thoughts in the comments below, and remember to subscribe if you haven't already. 2. Chatel Hauk. One of the world's most ancient settlements in the world, the settlement of Chatel Hauk was founded around 7500 BCE in what is now Turkey. As researchers uncover evidence of this ancient settlement, they found many unique traits of this ancient culture. Home to about 10,000 people, Chatel Hauk was first discovered in the 1950s. A settlement of agriculturalists, the people lived in mud brick houses that were built tightly together without any streets between them, with residents entering their houses by climbing a ladder and going in through the roof instead of doors. The residents, eerily enough, actually buried their dead under the floor. While excavating, researchers found that each house contained about 30 corpses beneath them. But as researchers set out to determine how the corpses were related, they found that there was no DNA evidence left to tie the various bodies together. Even after analyzing the teeth of 266 corpses, researchers found that people generally were not buried with their own relatives. A hunter-gatherer society, it's strange that these folks didn't show strong family ties when burying their dead. It seems that instead of arranging people in terms of blood relation, houses were defined by the tools and food resources the members used, with houses divided into several homes by the task they were equipped to handle. Oddly enough, instead of living with their biological families, the people tended to stay together with those who were doing similar tasks, such as taking herds to pasture or helping to harvest crops. Beginning 9,500 years ago and continuing for nearly 2 millennia, Chatel Hauk at one time had as many as 8,000 people. Researchers believe the settlement's downfall could be due to various environmental issues after finding evidence of deforestation, extensive burning, and erosion, which may have contributed to the ultimate dissolution of Chatel Hauk around 5500 BC. 1. Cappadocia. With such a rich culture in Turkey, it's not a surprise that the region was used by early Christians to create monasteries. What is unique is the fact that during the Roman rule of the area, they created underground cities in Cappadocia by carving into the soft rock. But the cities weren't necessarily only built as homes. They came in handy when invaders came to the area, allowing residents to hide underground in one of the 250 subterranean havens carved from the volcanic ash rock. In 2015, when a new housing construction project started in this region of central Turkey, the biggest hiding place, one that dates back to the early Byzantine times, was uncovered. Believed to have housed up to 20,000 people, the site was found when construction workers uncovered entrances to a network of rooms and tunnels. Bringing an archaeologist and geophysicist to survey the find, scientists found a multi-level settlement that had living spaces, wideries, winding staircases, and chapels. With air shafts and water channels, the underground retreat was able to house residents who sealed themselves inside with their livestock and supplies until threats from above passed. The site stretches over 1.5 miles, and its underground corridors are believed to plunge as deep as 370 feet. Located beneath local Nevşehir Castle, another area of the underground city was located when several houses in the district flooded. As a result of volcanic eruptions that occurred in the Upper Miocene period, Cappadocia was formed over thousands of years when the local rivers eroded the area, creating large chimney rocks. The first Christians settled there, creating these underground cities to flee from conflict, living there in interconnected rooms in one of the most important places for early Christian religion in Turkey. Thanks for watching. Which of these strange ancient communities piqued your curiosity? Are there any that you already know about? Tell me if there's anything important I missed when discussing them. Then remember to subscribe, and I'll see you again soon, right here on Talltanic.